Okay, so let us get to the interview. Richard Tetrault, Vancouver muralist, painter, printmaker, um, everything, artist in general. And you have your studio in Strathcona, so it's easy for people to visit. Is it open for visitors at this time?
It is, yes, under the usual control kind of methods, but
Yeah.
yeah, it is open. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because maybe if some of the students want to check you out in person,
Okay.
yeah.
They can sign up for if they want, for the culture crawl, and so they're scheduled in. There's going to be scheduled in time slots for people
Oh,
in the Eastside Culture Crawl.
okay.
It's spread out over 8 days this time around.
Oh, wow. That's long.
Two kind of extended weekends in November,
Yeah.
mid-November, so coming up.
Okay.
And it's all, it's kind of gotten more high tech, of course, because it's got to be that way these days. So
Yeah.
you can sign up and then take a time slot and come and visit. That's the best way to do it.
Okay, and so they can do that by
The Eastside
going
Culture
online.
website, yeah.
Okay. Just East Side Culture Crawl? Would that be?
Yeah.
.ca. Okay, good. Awesome.
Yeah.
So one of the first questions I have for you is, when did you first realize that you were an artist? When did you be like, that's me, I'm doing that thing?
Well, I'd like to say it was when I was 5 years old and just started painting, but I think that's when I realized how far I had to go.
Okay.
Well, because it was, it was like trying to copy others that were obviously, adults and considerably more proficient.
Yeah.
But I still had a pretty strong drive to paint things and draw things pretty early
From an
on.
early age.
Yeah, very early, and kind of ran concurrent with actually studying music. I was doing a lot of visual art, painting predominantly, right? And
did you go to art school?
yeah, I did. I actually went to the Vancouver School of Art.
Okay.
And I went to when I was a teenager, I went to some of the Saturday classes where I actually really got a lot of traction with some of the instructors there, like Gordon Payne, who was a great teacher. So, I grew up in White Rock. So going to Vancouver, that was a big expedition once every Saturday. But it really gave me a impetus to explore quite a bit in different directions.
And so when you were there, did you study painting specifically?
Mostly, yeah. And what I remember of that is going out on location and working and just kind of in the environment, and really loving that. So I was doing that like very early on, like as a teenager, painting nature and just loving being immersed in the subject.
So that was intrinsic.
Yeah, that plein air business, came to me pretty straight away. And there were a few other artists and teachers in White Rock who were pretty keen and key at inspiring me as well.
Nice.
And also my family was. So, my mom was a self-taught painter. And so she and I would go out paint in Surrey and out in the farms and along the rivers and everything in nature.
So you lived out in Surrey back then?
Yeah, well, White Rock,
White Rock, okay. White Rock's beautiful.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I was really close to the beach. And so that became one of my main subjects was, the waterfront, Crescent Beach, White Rock area.
Nice.
And yeah, very nice as a place to grow up, And of course, there wasn't really a lot of, external kind of distractions in a certain way. I mean, I really did kind of find my own direction by doing it. I'd say more than anything, but I think just being kind of compulsively driven is a big thing. I also had, some great teachers in art in high school who kind of allowed me to skip out and hang out in their class.
Nice.
For like many hours a day.
Nice.
So yeah, I think all of that combined, kind of bringing together of all those different influences. And also, like I say, having parents that never tell you that it's not a good thing to do, or that you should get serious about something else. they were always really supportive. So, and so along with music, which I studied as well, classical music.
Did you?
Hmm.
Do you play an instrument now?
No, just in my head.
Okay.
I did go to UBC for a year at Faculty of Music
Mm,
and studied, well, primarily classical piano and cello. Started learning cello
wow.
and composition and all of that for 1 year. But then I kind of got restless and hit the road and started traveling a lot. So I
Nice.
never did go back to UBC.
Maybe
Well,
you will one
years
day.
later, I went back and did some teaching there. But
Oh, okay. As an artist, though, you taught as an artist.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Awesome. So speaking that of the artist, in your idea, in your mind, how would you define an artist? And I know this has been asked of a lot of artists, and it's always interesting to hear responses from various artists. So for you, what is the defining of that exactly?
Yeah, that's pretty difficult to enunciate exactly, but because it can go in so many different directions.
Mhm.
But I think that when somebody is compelled to use art as their main vehicle of communication, then that probably is a pretty clear indicator that they're heading that direction.
Mhm.
Whether they're going to call themselves artists immediately or instantly or not,
Mhm.
a whole other thing. I mean, the so-called professional category of artist is, I suppose, something totally different. Somebody who goes out there and makes their living at it in some way, shape, or form. But I don't think that in the purer sense of artists that really necessarily applies.
Right.
It's really more about the compulsion to use some creative channel to express yourself.
So it's like
That's
it's the more of the emotional content that makes it,
mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
defines it as an artist rather than a professional artist who's like, oh, I do these things, people like these shapes, and I'm just going to do those.
Yeah, well, professional artist kind of almost implies that the commercial, channels of
Right.
selling art.
So like
But
they learned to be an artist, but they weren't just an artist, which is maybe a little bit of that.
yeah, well, where does it go? If you're just essentially driven by something, then you're, in
Yeah.
my mind, is going to be an artist, right? If you're essentially driven by, spelling things out through sound, then you're a musician. But
Right.
the profession is a whole other thing. That's like the
Hmm.
galleries and the marketing and that side of it, which, for some people it happens concurrently. It's kind of like their identity is through the marketing of it and all of that. But, I mean, like when I started, I never really called myself an artist exactly. But I mean, when other people start calling me that, then that's something else, right?
Right. Yeah. Like, okay, I did that. Yeah.
So I guess I am.
I guess so. Okay, that's great. Thank you. So can you tell me briefly when you painted your very first mural and for whom and where?
Yeah, I can actually. My first mural was for Simon Fraser University,
Mm,
and it was a pretty much uh, fortuitous like timing, because in 1977 I was living in Strathcona and going to art school for a second term, and a friend connected me with SFU for a mural project that she had lined up to do a couple murals in the Rotunda, which is a student lounge at SFU.
mm,
And so they were pretty good size. I mean, it was about 100 feet long each wall,
oh,
interior, 6 or 8 feet high, and running in a long frieze, kind of your classic mural like proportion in a way.
mm,
I just come back from a road trip to Mexico, which is obviously, where if you're ever going to get inspired about murals, it's going to be a place like traveling in Mexico. So
Yeah.
I was fired up about, what I'd seen there on my first big trip to Mexico. So Guadalajara and Mexico City, and seeing Orozco and Rivera and Siqueiros and all the fantastic murals and public venues there.
Mm.
So it really did influence that piece. And at the same time, there were a lot of protests around the nuclear power nuclear plant in Bangor, Washington. And a lot of stuff happening politically at that time.
Can you give us a year? Can you give us a year?
77.
77,
so
okay.
76, 77. And
Okay.
there were protests happening. And SFU was very political and outspoken. There was some very strong vocalizations of dissension around that nuclear base. Which was a Trident nuclear base. And so that was an inspiration for the mural. And so it became a real war and peace kind of a theme, very classic kind of dualities, which tied in, of course, with, the somewhat polemic stuff that I'd seen in Mexico. And also this kind of transformation kind of sensibility of figures transforming into machines and transforming into plant forms or natural forms. And so kind of split my piece like that. On one side, more like machine and armament, and a big wave, and then in the middle was an eclipse. Yeah. And on the other side were these natural forms and sea forms and figures coming out of shells and transforming into plant forms. So kind of, classic iconography in retrospect, but I think it was had a fairly unique feel to it at the same time. And my friend Maria Fitzgerald did another piece that also was a war statement piece, that more abstract passages than mine actually did. And so it filled that rotunda with quite a strong statement. Nice. And was up there for a long time. Was up there for quite a long time. Ultimately, unfortunately, they decided to change the tone of the lounge, and they dismantled it, and then they mysteriously disappeared, and nobody took claim for it or took responsibility for it being dismantled. So
that's a shame.
It pleased me too much with SFU.
Yeah, no kidding, hey? Did you get photos of it before it was gone?
Oh, yeah, well documented, and it actually appeared in a book on community murals by an American author, Alan Barnett, who I became friends with, and he came up here to expand his really thick book on community murals that were happening in the States.
Right.
And he had an appendix that included both Mexico, and another included Canada and Europe. So he included my piece in that. So it did get quite a bit of profile, and yeah, it's recorded. Yeah,
nice.
I do have.
I guess it was
I learned very early on that, yeah, you have to photograph your work as soon as you finish it.
Because it could disappear.
You don't know, right?
It sounds like it was like a sort of a hippie time too, 77. It was still like the paisley print suits and stuff. So maybe when they, they got into the more modern.
Yeah, it was, I guess that, it was through the student body, the student union, that actually commissioned us. And you could see that there was a change of sensibility, and that they, were more into decor than statement. 10 years, or I think it was about 15 years later that it was removed.
And now, of course, they're very art-based there.
Yeah, so that was the first mural, and of course I was pretty hooked from there on. A couple of years later, I was living on Powell Street, and I did a mural that really started more as a work on canvas, but I just kept adding to it, and it ended up being a mural that's in Carnegie Center.
Really?
On Carnegie. Yeah, and it's been there since 1980.
So where is it in Carnegie? In the lobby, or?
Yeah, in the main floor lounge. It was originally in the library, but now it's in the main floor in the lounge.
I have to go take a look. So that was your second mural.
Yeah, my second mural, and it's called Summer City Street, and it's just it's a big collage, really, literally a collage, mixed media on canvas that all link together. So 7 panels that all link together to make a quite a powerful statement about the street scene as I was experiencing it in 1979 when I
Mm.
finished it. Yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, that kind of dynamic of Hastings and Maine, and very
Right.
Cubist, is very Cubist, actually more Cubist inspired, I would say at that time, than Mexican inspired. So I guess you could kind of trace some of my influences through the different murals that I've done, at that stage anyway.
Right. Yeah. No, that
You're just kind of finding your language in a way, right?
when you're first starting out,
Hmm.
you're really getting out into the world and not just doing it in your own world like you were when you were younger.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Nice.
Mm.
Awesome. Um, so those first two murals, how did they lead you to the next and the next and then to, lino printing and wood block, and just how did that all like sort of flow into what you're doing now, where you've got those things happening uh, in
Yeah,
all the time in different works?
right. Yeah, all simultaneously, actually,
Yeah.
because I was doing wood print since the early 70s.
Okay.
And, that's one thing I got going on in art school. But first time I went to Vancouver School of Art. So there were some couple teachers there that introduced me to the idea of wood print.
Mhm.
And, I mean, it's like, it didn't take me very much to just get going on it in my own direction.
Yeah.
And so I carried on right through the 70s and 80s exploring wood print, relief print.
As beautiful as what you're making, having tried it myself and knowing that it's not as
Mhm.
easy as you make it look. So that explains it. It's a long time.
Carving lots of blocks. Yeah. And I mean, I did experiment. I've worked in screen printing and a bit in etching and, in art school and experiments and tries all the different mediums, right?
Yeah.
But wood print just remained a constant with me. And so
Mhm.
at the same time as I'm working on paintings and drawings and murals, I'm doing printmaking. And now what happened over the last 10 or 15 years more and more is that I use wood print as a way to kind of evolve some of my design ideas for murals.
Mm.
And I've done murals incorporating wood print
Oh,
and
really?
using wood prints as sort of startup templates that
Mhm.
then segued into stencils, doing huge stencil patterns it's very similar, kind of like simplifying things graphically. And
Yeah.
for in murals, that really is a segue that is find very effective, from the graphicness of a block printed image to the graphicness of a mural that has to stand out on a building from
Right.
hundreds of feet away to be really effective, right?
Right.
So yeah, and I guess just perpetually experimenting and being restless and wondering where else one can take something,
Hmm.
but essentially, I mean, in color printing, you're breaking down color sections into different plates or different layers, and in a similar way I kind of approach murals, working it up from the ground up.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah,
Layering of images and color.
layering it, yeah. Hmm.
Mhm.
So
Nice.
it's very, the kind of the mediums complement each other, I find.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and you do lino prints as well on glass, using glass as a um,
Yeah,
glass.
I've done lino cut, which is the same idea as woodcut, essentially. Also, monoprint, which is off of plexiglass plates.
What's it
It's like a
called?
monotype or
Mono. Mhm.
one of a kind prints, right? So the inks are rolled onto a plate and then run through the press, and you essentially get one image before it,
Because it absorbs all the ink off of the.
absorbs all the ink, so it's pretty much destroys your original.
Well, that's kind of
So
cool
it's
too.
multiples, right? So it's one of a
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Nice. Awesome.
So, but there's all kinds of interesting, variations now. I'm using colograph as
Holograph.
ground colograph. Yeah, so glued on sections of texture ground that gets printed through the press. Gets rolled with ink and printed through the press, and then a block like a wood block printed over top. So it's this
Ah,
kind of, again, just fusion of mediums, you know?
nice. That
Yeah,
must be beautiful.
yeah,
You've
yeah.
got some of those pieces up in your studio or in your
Yeah, that's
gallery?
what I'm kind of what I'm working on these days, right? So, yeah, I mean, I just like moving between different things, you know, large scale drawings,
Hmm.
uh, paintings on any surface whatsoever,
Yeah.
and then up to murals. And you know, this has not been, you know, that big a time for murals with the whole COVID thing.
Yes.
Put a bit of a curveball into that, but I did do one large, private, largish private commission this summer.
A
That was,
mural.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
but an outdoor private kind of courtyard,
Oh, in someone's home.
somebody's private home, yeah,
Nice.
which is unusual. Like I don't do that many private commissions like that. Usually they're
No.
community involved or community engaged, as you know,
Like the
uh,
Atira, uh,
like the Atira mural. Yeah.
or the KW Studios.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And the Orwell, you know, Eye of the Raven on Hastings, and,
Hmm.
you know, a whole lot in and around Maine and Hastings, actually, in the area. The Radius mural at the Fire Hall Arts Center in the courtyard. That was a real collaboration, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
so, yeah, we work, um, my partner Esther and I have a society called
Yes.
Creative Cultural Collaboration Society,
Okay.
and we initiate and kind of facilitate community engaged projects
Hmm.
that bring in people of different backgrounds and different skill levels and mentor people, mentor upcoming muralists. And so that's really what I've been interested in, involved in a lot
Mhm.
in the last 10 or 15 years, I'd say.
So would emerging artists find some help from you in a situation like that with this group that you and Esther have?
Yeah, yeah. Like for example, we'd I'd often work with 3 or 4 or even one other experienced mural painter.
Hmm.
Uh, I work a lot with Jerry Whitehead, for example,
Great.
who a lot of people know in Vancouver.
Hmm.
And so he and I have done quite a few projects together. And then sometimes if it's larger, then we'll bring in somebody else on it. And and in some of the situations, we've also then brought in several artists that want to be mentored
Hmm.
in mural painting. So go through the whole process of developing up designs collaboratively, um, sketching out ideas, and then scaling it up, and you know, everything like putting up the scaffold and gridding the walls and prepping the walls. So
Stencils.
it's a real kind of like the working side of mural painting, you know.
Yes, as beautiful as it is, there's a lot of labor involved in getting that thing up there and having the size proportionate.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean it's totally thrilling. You know, it's great fun. You know, tons of work and great fun at the same time, right?
Yeah.
But like the Eye of the Raven mural, there was 5 artists that worked on that, and only 2 of us had ever worked large scale.
Oh,
The other 3 were mentored in the process,
nice.
and it was a little nerve wracking because it's 6 stories high on a swing stage, so up on a wall with no support except some cables holding you up, and sliding up and down a wall on cables, and then making your design work.
And where is this? Is this
That's
something
on the Hastings at the Orwell Hotel across from the Patricia.
across from the?
400, where the Eye of the Raven studios are down below Jerry Whitehead. I don't know if you know those studios.
No.
Anyway, we did that in 2010. Really 8,000 square foot mural.
Wow,
So
that's huge.
that was what I call the weight loss program, because everybody sweated it out big time for 6 weeks on that wall. And really, yeah, big learning curve. But each of the artists that worked with us on it have carried on doing murals on their own. So that's been great to see.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very satisfying, I'm sure, to
Mm.
create such a large
Yeah.
piece of work.
exactly. I mean, that's that's the drama of murals, you know, is that you're changing the architecture of the landscape, you know, you're
Yes.
influencing the way actually, like with some of our murals, it's changed the tone of a street, you know,
Mhm.
by being a different presence on the street, kind of like this human presence and human, you know, care and attention. Like I say, you know, in the downtown east side, you need something that really illustrates that people have some care about the environment, right? The urban environment. And it changes, you know, changes the dynamics. We did a big mosaic on Commercial Drive called Community Walls, Community Voices in 2003. It's all mosaics. It's huge, like up to 10-foot diameter mosaics, 26 of them along this wall, run adjacent to Clark Park,
Mm,
which is where Commercial becomes segues into Victoria Drive.
yes, yes.
And it took a year and a half. It was a pretty
Wow,
crazy, ambitious project.
that's a long time.
Because of mosaic, you know, it's particularly tough to install. And also we involve several hundred people at different stages of the design and creation of these mosaics.
So when you say
And then
mosaics, were you using paint or you were using
a
other
tile,
tile?
yeah,
Okay, yeah.
colored tile. And then we had a workshop space, and we had people in groups coming, youth and elders, and you know, First Nations groups, and different cultural groups, and they all got involved in designing different circles that reflected their idea of origins. So that was the underlying theme of it.
Yeah.
And it was however people wanted to take that, you know, personal origins or cultural origins, or you know, where they came from. So those designs were developed up and then made into these really large mosaics, which, you know, I mean, when we first conceived of it, it's nothing like a painted mural
No.
where you can paint it in you know, maybe in a month, maybe a
Yeah.
wall like that in a few weeks. But to do it as a mosaic and with that many people involved, yeah, that was over a year long.
Well, that's
Um,
epic.
Yeah, but it's great because it really has changed the tone of that. You know, had a pretty intense vibe around that area, and the previous wall was a beat up old concrete retaining wall
Ah,
that had no kind of visual
appeal.
quality to it whatsoever. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think it changed the way that people look at those couple blocks of Commercial Drive.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
well, I mean, people have told us that, so I'm not just making that up.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's definitely I mean, any artwork is essentially affects the space it's in, but you know, if it's in your living room, it's only impacting that space. But for to be on a wall, a retaining wall, or whatever type of mural you've done in downtown, like
Mhm.
you know, changing bridge housing so drastically um, for the entire neighborhood, it's really more elevated. It feels uh, um, more happy, although it may
Yeah.
not be so happy there for the people who are living those lives at this time, but it has a happy feel, you know?
Yeah, well, and as with the Atira mural, right? I mean, it's engaging people that were staying there at the women's shelter
Yeah,
in the design of stencils. Actually, that's an example where we use stencils,
yeah.
and so we did workshops with them, as you know, and
With
that
the women.
level of engagement is the other stage of the process. You know, it's not just tossing anything up. It's really thinking about what is relevant material, what's relevant imagery and symbolism or
Hmm.
iconography that's going to sustain and is going to say something about that organization or about that community. So
Hmm.
that's where, you know, the whole developmental aspect of mural making is is really important to me. I mean, I got a lot of inspiration from the American mural movements, you know, in various cities in the States where, you know, they've, you know, generally marginalized groups that have developed up murals since the 60s and 70s. Tremendous statements about, you know, the Afro-American experience and the Chicano experience and the, you know, Latino experience in different neighborhoods, different large cities like San
Yeah.
Francisco or LA or Chicago,
Mm.
Philadelphia, and just profound and beautiful pieces,
Mm-hmm.
largely done through community engagement in some form or another.
Mm-hmm.
So, some artists take that on and they did, it's marginal kind of engagement. Others
Yeah.
take it on in a much more full on 100% kind of way.
Yeah.
And that's usually the way that, we like to work in our community involved processes. So the Atira mural, for example, back to that, really did involve a lot of engagement. So with Ari Ishii and Michelle Stoney and myself as coordinating artists, and then working with people who had some ideas, some abilities, some, abilities to design some things, but they couldn't get up on the scaffold, or they couldn't get up on the boom lift, whatever we're using,
Yeah.
to actually paint them. However, they could work on these stencil designs that we could then take up there and transcribe onto the wall.
Right.
So
they were part of your creative process.
Yeah, finding different devices and different means to incorporate people's voices, right?
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like the community aspect. It's really important.
Mm-hmm.
Situations like that. So here's a question, and this is more for people who are sort of starting out, is how do you find groups or people that want a mural or a painting or a print? Do you directly market? Do you have ongoing clients? How did you really start doing this when you were an unknown artist, when you were just this guy, and now you're Richard Tetrault, but not that you weren't before, but now you're known in many places in the world. So what happened before that, Richard, happened?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. I mean, I guess, it's sort of like in different waves, right? Like small town White Rock, I was kind of getting to be known. But that's then, and then as soon as I left that behind, it was like I was unknown.
Okay.
Vancouver and
Yeah.
But I mean, having some shows and all of that. I mean, very kind of small increments, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for some people it's like overnight, like they go from obscurity to something,
It happens.
sensation, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, it was just being engaged, I guess, for over many, many years in the community was a big part of it. And also just kind of really putting myself out there a lot, because that's really what mural painting, for example, requires.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would be known as much if I didn't do murals.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Like if I was a studio painter, people would know me as for my paintings, but I think that it's kind of in tandem with the murals and the public projects that I do, that many people just identify with that predominantly as who I am.
Right.
When in fact I have this other life too, which is the studio life, right?
Yeah, which is the painting and the printmaking and such.
Yeah, but I mean, it is kind of an interesting question, because I mean, I guess one's reputation just kind of evolves over a period of time.
Right.
I mean, I initiate a lot of things, because I initiated, for example, teaching programs through the schools by creating my own curriculum, and going into a school and saying, I can do this with kids. I can teach a class. I can take a class on and teach them mural painting. And every school in this town has got blank walls. So I started my own program back in the early 80s in Strathcona here. And then when the word got around, and so I became an artist in residence with the school board, and then started teaching at UBC for a few years through a special program there. And so that was kind of like an example of initiating something, not waiting for some organization to come and drag me out of my studio, but actually, you know what I mean? So there is a difference.
Support yourself.
Yeah, there is a difference. And the same with, exhibiting. And of course, we all say back in the 80s, all we did was put up shows and take shows down and put them up, and nobody was buying much.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty tough slog of it, right?
Right.
Doesn't mean you stop working, you just keep working, but the work piles up, and you keep trying to, searching out venues to show work, even though the economy might be in a slump and nothing happening. I mean, COVID is a pretty good example of that too.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean they stop working. They still have the same.
The drive is there.
Yeah, the drive is still there. I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, in a way, it's even more imperative, I think, to continue creating at this time.
Mm-hmm.
It makes more sense. It gives me more of a focus, more of a sense of balance in a kind of an unhinged world.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that at this time some of your work is focusing around the isolation and the pandemic? Is it coming out in the work, your own experience?
Yeah, in some directions, some of the pieces are, but not all of them. Not all of them. No, I just kind of have found that I've had time to tap into some of my sketches and drawings from different trips and different experiences
Mm-hmm.
that I haven't had time to really develop up. So I've been working on a couple of series that have been I've been wanting to get to, and
Okay.
up until now. So yeah, so it's kind of different. In fact, in an odd way, I'm getting away from the urban, kind of gritty urban landscape thing that I seem to have become known for in the downtown east side, and broadening out into more shorelines and coastal environments, some of which, kind of reflect this series we've been developing collectively called Elusive Landscapes.
Who's the other people?
Well, it's a group of us called La Raza Group.
Okay.
And we've shown a series in Croatia and in Mexico and in Cuba, actually, a show in Cuba. So it's an evolution of a series that's dealing with more like our Canadian landscape and environment, and sometimes with human presence, and sometimes looking at environmental issues like plastic in the environment, for example.
Okay.
So that's something that I keep coming back to. So both Esther, my partner Esther Rosenberg, and I have developed some pieces together with her photographs, and then my wood prints projected through them.
Nice.
Kind of backlit,
Very nice.
Yeah, so like that series is evolving, and they're I guess none of these series have a real end. They have a beginning, but they don't really have an end.
Right, it's an ongoing thing. Well, I mean, certainly the environmental issues are an ongoing thing.
They are, yeah. So
have you come into anything with oil? Have you? Just curious.
You know what? I started painting in oils when I was like a teenager. That's what I painted in. But then was getting really sick from it, so I stopped using oils.
No, actually, I was referring to big oil because you were talking about this whole plastics and
oils like not paint, but oils oil
paints, yeah. No.
Oils in the environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so far it's been more focused on like just slightly the innocuous things like straws and plastic bottles and balloons and things that kind of that people can all relate to, but they don't necessarily think of the long-term impact of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I think you kind of have to live in a bubble to not realize the impact of it these days. But
nowadays,
it's a subject that's worth exploring and worth expressing, and coming at it from different angles. So, making displays, and we've had some shows in public buildings that have showcased those themes.
Yeah. Cool.
But they can go in all different directions. I mean, our group does a series where we work collaboratively over each other's work, and we kind of add to, and very organic sort of process, and work on big sheets that we roll up and take on planes and can show in other countries.
Fun.
So, yeah, it's kind of like traveling murals in a way.
Sorry, do you have murals in other parts of the world right now?
There are some, yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, the one we did in Cuba is apparently still there, and that was about 8 or 9 years ago. And we got invited down by a group of artists in Santiago de Cuba, and which is on the other side of the island from Havana. And we went there as a small group of us to paint coordinate a mural, and then we worked with some Cuban artists as well. So great fun, real learning curve, and how they would gain influence and experience in working with other artists, because they couldn't get visas to leave Cuba particularly, or couldn't even afford to leave Cuba if they could, is that they would invite groups down to come and do a wall. And so they'd choose a wall, find a wall, help prep it, assist us in every way they could, aside from financially, of course. And then we brought down everything, our acrylics and all our materials as much as we thought we could carry down, and get through customs with, and then worked with a really amazing group of painters and printmakers, and worked on a scaffold with them for 10 days or so to do a mural that we designed. And so, yeah, it was quite a great experience. So that mural is still there. Apparently it's changed from a gas station. It was in front of an old, really funky gas station, and now it's become a kind of a club, sort of a patio bistro-like place.
Oh, nice.
It's ranked up, but
yeah,
people have been there and they said the mural's still there, so that's cool.
That's very cool.
And we've done some in Mexico, one in the University of Cuernavaca back in the 90s. And then several like portable murals, and I don't know where they ended up. They were like on plywood and done as kind of symposiums of international muralists in different cities in Mexico and in Argentina, where we basically set up in the center square like a zocalo or a plaza in each city, paint murals for a few days, and then they get donated to the city. So we leave them behind, and then the city takes them and installs them somewhere. So I don't know where those have ended up, but
very cool.
Just just a reason, it's a way to travel and meet people, right? And immediately meet artists and kind of minded people. So that's the main thing, has been mostly in Latin American countries, but one in Oakland in the States way back when, and different parts of Canada.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what would you say would be something you could suggest to people in terms of your digital presence? So I know you have pretty much everything, I think: Facebook, Instagram, a website. What would you say about that in terms of getting out there in today's world, where getting out there in a physical way is becoming a bigger challenge than ever before?
Well, I'm not really I wouldn't be the go-to person to talk about, media, using social media as a tool, because I do use it, but I don't know that I'm necessarily up to speed in all channels of it. Although it's pretty interesting, the diversity of options that are out there. I mean, I do post stuff on Instagram, I do post stuff on Facebook, and a lot of that is work related, and I have a website that I keep up, I'm using like different device for documenting my work now, which becomes a bigger and bigger challenge as time goes on. How do you document it and keep track of everything? So that's kind of a winter project, right? Is to put everything up in this. I'm using Artwork Archives right now.
Oh yeah.
Which is a system where just helps facilitate chronicling one's work.
Is that a website, or is that a software?
It's a software, yeah.
The software, okay.
Yeah, just basically pay per year kind of a site, but we'll see where that goes. But yeah, it's pretty challenging because it just takes so much time, and that's time away from the studio, and so it's kind of somewhat reluctant often. But I also realize it's pretty important, because a lot of people do look at websites, of course, and so important to have a good number of works up there and have it readable and accessible, and learn how to document your work is really an important thing. Getting clear shots and.
Well, your partner Esther, she's very good at that as a photographer.
It is, although I gotta say, you know, I do a lot of the documenting myself for my own work,
Okay.
just because it's like it's ongoing and I can't keep bothering her for it.
Yeah.
So I set up work as I go, you know, and kind of like take fairly high resolution shots and know how to crop them and
Yeah.
set them up and light them. You know, it's way easier with digital, right?
Oh yeah.
And back in the slide and, you know,
When
analog
did you
days,
mail your photos?
it was, yeah, take everything outside in a bright cloudy day and set it up. It was a big job, right?
Yeah.
So a lot easier, I would say, but still a lot of people kind of mess up on documenting their work.
Mm-hmm.
They don't do it as well as they could, so they
Mm-hmm.
don't showcase their work as well as they could.
Yeah.
That's just my experience, and you know, being on some juries and committees and that is like
Mm-hmm.
you gotta organize your work and
Yeah.
make clear statements about your work. You know, and have to be long-winded and has to be all full of, you know, fancy art speaky stuff, but you got to be able to talk about it and be excited and clear about it, right? Yeah. And the same about, you know, and documenting your work, got to be able to put it together, and when somebody asks you for 10 images, be able to supply 10 images.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, just those are things that you kind of learn in the process of doing it. But
Well, that's why there's people like you to mentor people.
Sorry?
I said that's why there's people like you to mentor people, because you've done.
Well, and you know what? There are shorter routes to where I've gotten to, and I know that, and I know there are, as far as, you know, self-promotion as well. You know, there are people out there that are better at promotion than I am,
Mm-hmm.
but that's okay. You know, I don't pretend to be good at all these things.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So you have a certain number of talents. They're all excellent, but yeah, I'm sure that's all. But think
Yeah.
about, you know.
Well, you know, you got to learn how to present your work well. That's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Right.
So is there anything else you would suggest in terms of a person who has such an experience, a long experience of living as an artist and selling your art, making a living off of your art? Can you suggest anything that we haven't really talked about?
Well, you know, I mean, just putting in the time, right? Like being committed to it and doing the time is a huge, it can't be, you can't overestimate, you know, you gotta do the hours and be there, you know, because as they say, you know what, you can't sit around waiting for the inspiration to strike, because it might strike and you're not in the studio and then it's lost, right?
True. Yeah. Right.
I want to miss those moments. But I think I also, I mean, for me, like I love keeping sketchbooks. And so drawing all the time and recording things from the outside world is huge. And that's a big source material too. It's both a way to evolve ideas, right? And to develop ideas so that even when you're traveling, you can have an ongoing dialogue with yourself about
what you're seeing,
what you're thinking and seeing, because you'll never get it back the same way.
Yes.
I mean, people travel and say, yeah, I'm going to remember that. I'm going to remember that. Well, you won't remember that moment.
Yeah.
And you're there and standing on that street corner and drawing it. You'll remember everything about that moment. You'll remember the kids you meet. You remember the atmosphere, the shade, the light, the shifting light.
Yeah.
All of that can infuse your drawings.
Yeah.
Even if it's, you know, quick, and even if it's like just on the fly kind of a thing and it seems rudimentary, it's going to be more valuable to me than just grabbing a snapshot, for example, which to me is kind of the lazy way out, because you're missing the experience of being there, right? Drawing
the emotion. The emotion.
Yeah, drawing on the spot is absorbing the experience as much as anything.
Yeah.
So that's me, but you know, I'm old school, right?
That's fine. That's it's important.
Well, you find your own, you know, methodology, right? You know, whatever gets you inspired. You know, I mean, having a lot of stuff strewn around the studio is inspiring. Some people have totally neat studios. I kind of don't understand that, but you have to make a bit of a mess, you know, and stuff lying around because then it suggests things to you, you know, like
Right.
collage material or, you know, old prints you can tear up and stuff like that can lead you in new directions. So, you
True.
know, I kind of am a big believer in just kind of chance and serendipity of ideas and one thing leading to another,
Hmm.
which happens better when you have the luxury of a space that you can spread out. Not everybody has that.
Yeah, that's true, especially younger people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, having worked in really small spaces and now having a bigger space,
Hmm.
I appreciate what I've got as far as a working space goes.
Right.
It's kind
Yeah.
of, it's luxurious in so many ways.
Yeah, right. Very true. I know this COVID forced me to close my studio. So that was really sad. All of my art supplies are in a storage container in Richmond.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah,
I've had to go to completely digital unless it's just pen and ink, you know.
right.
So yeah, it's, the having a place to do it where you can just like be there and feel the inspiration.
Yeah,
That is a luxury for sure.
yeah.
But you
But
earned it.
but you can scale it down and still, you know, create a little mess. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
you could still have a corner of a room, or, you
yeah,
know, I mean, whenever I travel, like wherever I am, I make that place a studio, like
right.
for 3 days or whatever it is, or 3 weeks. So
Yeah,
you make it happen.
true. Very true. You can do it if you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, those are my questions. Is there anything else you'd like to say for anyone who might be wondering what to do, as we're all currently wondering with it being the way it is now?
Yeah, everybody's wondering what to do in a certain way, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, creating something is a great vehicle to kind of give yourself some grounding, you know? I mean, as much as anything, it just gives you a sense that there's some aesthetic thing happening in your life, you know, that you can lay your hands on, that you can actually affect, because there's so many things that are out of our control,
Yeah.
that being in, you know, creating something is within your control. So I think that's a pretty profound, you know, difference between just like giving up in despair and watching the stupid news all the time and the
Yeah.
stupid, you know, this and that,
Yeah.
and just feeling that like there's a feeling of inadequacy and hopelessness that comes with that, you know. And so at some point you just toss it, you know. I mean, you don't need to hear it all the time. You know how, you know what's good and bad out there, and
Yeah.
you just don't need to submerge yourself in it to the point
Right.
where you're like suffocating. You
Right.
know, getting in the studio is a lot more fun,
Yeah, no kidding.
right?
I agree entirely. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be about as far as my advice would go at the moment. Get in the studio and have fun at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this has been really great. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me. I appreciate that.
Okay. All right, Josephine. Nice to
Yeah.
talk. All
Yeah.
right. And
Okay.
we'll see you in person sometime soon.
Yes, I'll come and see. I'll come during the crawl and
Do that. Please do. Yeah. Yeah. You can, yeah, go and sign up or just drop by. But
yeah.
better if you, and then we'll see you.
When is the
Come,
crawl again this year? The East Side Culture Crawl, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And what are the dates of it?
It's it's two. It's a Thursday and Friday evening. God, I should have the dates memorized, but I don't. You have to look them up. November, first week in November, and then the second week in November.
Okay.
So
Because
it's
it's 8 days, right?
yeah, it's 2 Thursdays and Friday evenings and 2 Saturday Sunday afternoons.
Okay.
Daytimes.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, we'll see
All
you
right.
then.
We'll see you then.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Cheers.
Okay. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.